Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Nerds and a Podcast. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Korey Durham. Woo. Um, Korey, why
Woo!
don't you tell our audience a little bit about you, a little bit about the amazingness of the fact that you're a voice actor?
Yeah, so I do voice acting. I've I kind of specialize in impressions, but I do a lot of original, voiceover stuff too. But yeah, I'm mostly known for online as far as my impressions. And then this earlier this year, the biggest thing I've done in the last year or so is I got to voice Barney for Mattel,
Oh my
which
god,
was
that's
which was
amazing.
fun.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. They're doing this new animated cartoon that's supposed to come out later this year, which is totally separate from what I did.
Mm-hmm.
They were also alongside that wanting to do marketing for the old original Barney, the nostalgia of the original.
Mm.
So I came in and did the voice for Barney, and that was so much fun. It was so much fun to do. So that's what
That's
I did.
amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So how did you get into voice acting? Because
I
like,
was
don't
just
get me
about to
wrong, I
ask
know a
that.
lot of kids growing up that like were really good at impressions, but like I feel like the jump from just being good at impersonating things to actually like doing it for a living is quite a big leap. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, so for me. It started out with I was a kid watching a lot of cartoons and grew up, and I still watch cartoons, so that's
Mm-hmm.
hasn't changed. And you start. I liked the Looney Tunes specifically was one of my favorites,
Mm.
and I watched a lot of that. And all these voices, these crazy character voices. I kind of started looking into like who's doing these voices because I just found it interesting
Mm-hmm.
and found out it's basically all Mel Blanc, one guy,
Yeah.
and that was incredible to me because I was like, wow, that's a lot of range. He can do a lot of different things. So I kind of started trying to learn how to do that.
And I learned how to do Bugs Bunny Doc, and that's one of my favorite voices to do.
And I
Oh
did
my
that.
gosh.
Then I learned how to do Daffy Duck, and that was even better.
But just stuff like that. Learned how to do a bunch of Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny, Looney Tune character voices, and
Mm-hmm.
that, like you're saying, that a lot of people kind of are good at a couple of voices, and so I kind of took it real serious. I started all through my teenage years and into my 20s. I was just every time I heard an interesting voice, I was like, I'm going to try to learn how to do that, and I really studied how the speech pattern and the dialect and all the different
Mm-hmm.
things of what makes a voice unique. And some voices I still struggle with trying to learn how to do, and others I can do really quick. It just kind of depends. And but your original question is, how do I go from that to doing it professionally? So I was gonna do it right out of high school, and then
Mm-hmm.
I got married really young, and that was not a good idea because it did not work out.
Yeah. So I'll say it's only for select people, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. Some people, it works out and great for them, but not so much for me. But um, I was just young and dumb, I guess, and so I didn't really focus on that for a while, and then I kind of got into it, taking it seriously when my new wife that I married 3 years ago, she kind of kept pushing me on it, like you really need to do something with this. And then my family's been saying that for years, and so end of 2019, I kind of was like, I'm gonna try everything I can to do this year, starting in 2020. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go. So I planned all these,
Oh.
like, I'm gonna go to this big conference, and I'm gonna go do
Yeah.
this, and then COVID hits, and I'm like, well, crap, I can't do any of that now.
Yeah.
So
Perfect timing.
I started just doing research online. I just started watching master classes online and any videos I could find online about how to get into it. I set up a studio here at my house. I had my dad
Oh
help me
wow.
build a studio. We built a vocal booth that's soundproof and everything, and basically started just recording demos. That's the big thing you want to do is
Mm-hmm.
you need to have a demo track that kind of goes, like I would if you're going to do if somebody's wanting to get into voice acting, I would say do a commercial demo first, meaning You get
Mm.
a whole bunch of commercials, so you kind of listen to the different styles of voiceover in commercials, and you do a variety of really different sounding commercials and maybe a 10 or 15 seconds of each one, and
Mm-hmm.
throw 5 or 6 of them together that kind of contrast each other. So it's like one's real slow and one's real fast. And, that's a good start. And then set up a website and then just start pitching that to agencies and pitching that to potential clients. The biggest thing I did starting out was I started going to local businesses around me that I knew had commercials on TV, and I said, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm new to voice acting. Here's my link to my website." I gave him like a card, and just told him, here's what I do, and did some impressions for them so they can kind of see the range of things I can do. And yeah, that was successful as far as getting me some small work. And then you use that, and I made a Facebook page and an Instagram, and started posting just impressions and stuff on Instagram and TikTok. And Instagram is where I kind of got a lot of attention real quick, which was pretty
Yeah,
exciting.
love Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram, like as much as like TikTok will catapult you if you hit it just right, I feel like Instagram is definitely the place where if you want like a loyal following who
Right.
will like
Yeah.
kind of always
Mhm.
check in, Instagram's definitely the place to be.
Yeah, that's my favorite of the social media for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
I like TikTok, but um, I'm not really that active on it. Just
Yeah, same.
like kind of what you're saying, you can on Instagram, when I post something up here recently, it's like I'll get 600 to 1,000 views in an hour or two,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the same people that always watch my stuff, and they kind of see it, and if they like it, then they start sharing it out, and then it gets to people who are not following me, already.
Yeah.
So there's that loyal fan base of people who are going, wow, I really like what you do, I'm going to follow you, and then it shows them that, whereas TikTok's not really that way. I feel like it's the algorithms are totally different.
It also
You
depends.
see
I
new
feel like
stuff all the time.
yeah, TikTok has like I feel like two different kinds of viewers. They have the people who just strictly use their for you page, so you never really get
Mhm.
a whole lot of the same person,
Yeah.
or you have the person who does follow people but they're just not very active with it. So, I feel like
Yeah,
Instagram is like the better mix.
for sure. Yeah, that's what I feel like too. Also with TikTok, you do have the biggest thing I've found on there is if you do live stuff all the time, you can get more
Mm,
people to watch you. And
yeah.
so that's kind of cool with TikTok, but it takes a long time to build up anything on there from what I've at least the experience I've had with it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Good old
Unless for
social
whatever
media.
reason you just hit it just right with the right person and then they share it with everybody and it just blows up very quickly. But
Yeah.
like I mean, you see it like once in a blue moon, but yeah, Instagram's definitely where it's at.
Yeah, yeah, and I had used to years ago. I was on YouTube a lot as a teenager, making just crazy
Mhm.
videos, which I've definitely taken down now because I was like, those
You're
were
like nobody needs to
embarrassing.
see that.
Yeah, they're embarrassing, just silly. I mean, nothing offensive or anything, but it's just like really amateur and really silly.
Mhm.
But I started putting all my, I cross post everything to YouTube as well, and I
Mhm.
did a I did a video recently with a guy that does a Kermit impression, Kermit the Frog,
Oh.
and he has a Kermit puppet and everything, and I actually have a Barney puppet that I built and put together. It's for specifically like live streams. People like that; they think it's kind of cool. I'm not
Yeah.
really a puppet guy, but I do
But
like it. I think
hey.
it's cool. But anyway, so we did a video together, a puppet video, where Barney and Kermit are singing the song from Barney, "Just Imagine," and
Oh.
it kind of took off on YouTube because it got thrown onto YouTube Kids as well. And so
Oh,
within
yeah.
like
Ooh.
2 weeks, it's gotten like 76,000 views, which is wild.
Dang.
And I haven't
Amazing.
promoted it until the last 2 or 3 days, and I'm like, holy crap, I've got all these views. So now I'm like trying to not put myself in a box where it's like all I'm doing is Barney stuff because I want
Yeah.
to do other things, but at the same time, if I'm getting 70 something thousand views, I probably should do a few more.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
definitely keep it in the mix.
Hmm.
That's pretty crazy though. I don't think I can do like a single impression at all. I, like it's so crazy. Like I don't, and I am like Jamie knows this, but I
Yes.
am like, it's like my special interest is like voice actors. So like once I find out, like especially with anime, like once I find out somebody
Yeah.
voices something, I need to know everything they've ever voiced in their entire life.
That's the kind of people that voice actors absolutely love because, that's what you want is, you do one role and then you want people to be like, oh, what else did they do? That doesn't always happen, unfortunately, um, but yeah, anime is something I would absolutely love to get into. I'm working right now uh, on getting an agent. So far, everything I've gotten has been totally on my own, and I didn't really try
Wow.
to pursue an agent because I was like, what? Let's do this as long as I can without having to give away any money to someone
Yeah.
Mhm.
else. but
Mhm.
but at a certain point, you kind of go, okay, if I want to go to the next level of getting auditions for bigger things, I'm gonna have to do that, which is fine.
Yeah. Gonna need some help.
That's why it's there.
Mhm.
But that's what I'm working on right now is getting an agent, and I have a couple people that I've been had connections with. Like one of them is the lead singer of the band Bowling for Soup. I don't know if you know who that is,
Oh,
Yeah.
but Jarrett Reddick. He's also the voice. You're talking about voiceover. He's the voice of Chuck E. Cheese and has been since like 2010 or something like that.
That's right.
And he's also sang the theme song to Phineas and Ferb.
Yes, that I did
what? I didn't
So,
know that.
so
That's
I've
crazy.
been a huge Bowling for Soup fan since I was like a teenager, and we used to go to all of their shows because they're based out of Dallas, which is only about an hour or two from me,
Nice.
and we would go to all of their shows when they were in the area, so several times a year, and I got to know him from that because we'd go out afterwards. They're really good about hanging out at the bus and just kind of interacting with fans, which is so cool. And I got to know him because he saw me at so many of them. He kind of was like, "What's your name?" And starts talking to
Yeah.
me. And over the years, over 10 years, I got to really know him well. And he had me on his podcast a couple months ago, which was cool. And now he's like kind of taken an interest, which is the coolest thing to me ever because I'm a huge fan of his. And he's like, "I want to help you with this. Let's get you an agent. You need one. You need to get So he's helping me with that, which is like a dream come
That's
true.
amazing.
Because he's like,
That is
when as
super
a
cool.
teenager he was one of my idols. I was like, this guy's the greatest.
Yeah.
But to be able to be
That's the
friends with him now is
craziest
cool.
connection ever. And I love that for
Right.
you.
And he does voice acting, so it ended up working
Yeah,
out because
that's
he's like, hey,
and the
I've got
fact that he
two
does
agents that would
voice
be
acting
great.
too.
Yeah, he does voice acting.
That's crazy. Like, what are the odds that like one of your idols not only like becomes your friend, but then also is like, "Hey, I do that too, and I think you're gonna be really good. We need to get you an agent." Like, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
there's been a lot of lucky stuff like that. Like I've gotten to know a lot of cool people over the last 2 3 years. Like I got to meet the original Barney, Bob West. I got to know him.
Oh,
He was messaging me before I got the role, and he was telling me because I'd posted videos of doing the impression, and he was like, "That's really good. Like, it sounds better than I've ever heard anybody else but me do it." Basically, and
wow.
he was like, You're so close. He's like, he gave me some tips. He's like, here's the only thing I'd change, and I did that. And he was like, well, you're real close now, like to the point it's almost you can't tell. And
That's
we
crazy.
it was fun because he invited me. He was in my estate, and so he invited me to a Comic Con that he was at,
Mhm.
and we made a video together where me and him are singing "I Love You" as Barney, and so we're just alternating lines, and so you can kind of like go, here's me singing, here's him singing, and it's back and forth, and it's like it's really really hard to if you close your eyes, it's like wow, I know
Just
because I
sounds
can
like the
hear
same
it because it's
person.
me,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a lot of people that are like I can't tell whenever it's you and him when it's my eyes are closed, and I was like that's a good compliment, which is cool. But yeah, I've gotten to know a lot of people like that. And it's I never would have thought that because I live in a little bitty tiny town in North Texas, and the town I live in has like 2,000 people here. So
Mm.
it's a small town. I've grown up in this area forever since I was a child, and kind of it's cool because you can do voice acting from your house.
Yeah, I love that. I was about to say, even though COVID was kind of a bump in the road, it is nice because you are a voice actor, so you don't really necessarily need to travel anywhere. Just do it from your
Hmm.
house. And I love the
Yes,
family
that's
support
cool.
for you of them building you a
Yeah,
little studio and stuff. That's amazing.
yeah, it's they've been really supportive, which is good. I think you have to have a little bit of that. You have to have
Oh,
somebody
for
that
sure.
pushes you along and says, like my wife, she would get mad at me. She'd get really frustrated at me because I'd be like, I knew I was decent at it, but I was like, I don't know if I'm as good as everybody thinks. They're saying. And she was just like, no, if you don't do something with this, I'm gonna be really upset at you. And my uncle was kind of the same way. He kind of jumped on board with her and was like, no, you got to do this. Here's what we're going to do. You need to do this. And I was like, okay, let me do some research and figure out what I want to do. And he's like, no, you're not doing that right now. Throw on just put videos of what you can do now on Instagram, on Facebook, on these places. And he's like, you just wait and see. He's like, I don't think it's just going to be us that thinks this is cool. And I was like, all right. I had absolutely no, you know, I didn't
Yeah.
believe
No
that it was
no
going to be
vision for
anything.
the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it. I
You're just
figured it was going
like,
to be.
it's for fun. It's for the
Yeah, that I
lulz.
never. So to be able to be like, okay, if everything continues on the same trajectory, which it may not, who knows? But if it continues, keeping staying, having new clients and building up clientele, I may eventually in 4 or 5 years, maybe that's only all I have to do. So that would be the dream because
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't doing voice acting even on the days where it's like hours of in the studio doesn't feel like work. it's so
No, it's
it's so
all
fun.
fun.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work at all. It's the coolest thing ever.
Now, what would be your dream project? If somebody came up to you and said, I wanted you to do this right now, what would it be?
Well, I've always said I want to voice Bugs Bunny because
Mm-hmm.
Bugs Bunny's my favorite voice ever. But the guy that's doing it now is pretty good. So and he's young, so I don't see that being a potential role. But who knows? Um, but I really like creating new voices. So I'm working on a pilot right now with a guy that actually used to work on Barney, but it's not for
Oh.
a kids. It's not a kids show. It's going to have puppets and animation and live action. It's kind of a blend of different types of things, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a New Orleans, Louisiana style background, like the show. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be kind of that Louisiana culture, and it's they're the main characters. Some of them are human, and some of them are a new character that are creation of. He's called crawligators, and that's what the name of the project is the crawligators. So it's like a mix between a crawfish and an alligator, and yeah, it's gonna have like the plan is we're real early in the process, but he's kind of doing it in an unconventional,
Mm-hmm.
unconventional way where a lot of productions aren't going to say anything about what they're going to put out until they're done with it and going
Mm-hmm.
here it is, here's a trailer and all this. He's done it the opposite. He's like, I want everyone to be involved in it. I want everyone to see the process, and so that way when we're done with it, they're like, wow, this is what came from all this work. And so he's totally open with like, let's just talk about it. Everybody let's build up an audience that's kind of anticipating what we do. And so yeah, there's a Crawligators website, there's a Crawligators Facebook page and stuff like that. And he's going to have plush dolls and stuff to kind of sell to alongside it, which could be
Mm-hmm.
pretty neat. I haven't seen them all or any of that yet, but I think it's going to be fun. Right now, I'm kind of just working on brainstorming voice ideas for about 15 characters, which is going to
Wow.
be fun. It's right now it's just me and one other voice actor, and it's the voice actor is Josh Martin, who um, has voiced, I think, something in Dragon Ball,
I
but
was
Oh,
I'm
about to
not
say
cool.
the
positive.
name sounds familiar, but I
Let
don't
me look
know
it. Let me
where
look it up.
from.
I can tell you. Josh Martin is. Let's see. I should know this because I know him, but but I've only met him
You
one
never
time in
know anything
person.
about your friends, okay?
Right?
That's true. I hardly know their birthdays except for Jamie's. Hers is pretty easy.
Yeah, he worked in Dragon Ball in the Dragon Ball franchise. He was Commander Red. He was. Forgive me, I'm not good at these names.
No, that's
Kid
fine.
Buu, Evil Boo,
Oh, he was
or
Majin
B. It's
Buu.
B
That's
U
super
U. I don't know how
cool.
that's pronounced. But yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. He's worked on a whole lot of different projects. So it's kind of fun to get to work with somebody like that. But yeah, he's done a lot of Dragon Ball stuff. So hopefully working with, I'm going to definitely pick his brain on how do I get into anime?
Yeah, for sure. Because anime is such a big industry, especially now that it's kind of more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
For
Like,
sure.
and
Yeah.
there's just so much anime out there.
Yeah. And
So much
it's
anime.
nonstop. They're dubbing everything over to English. So
Mm-hmm.
it's great. Um, but yeah, I would say to go to the first question of like, how do you get into it? I think you put stuff out there first. That's the first hurdle is put stuff out there for people to see, um, promote it, push it to people, try to, send it to your friends, ask them to share it with people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then, from there, uh, just try to start making connections. So like with me, I started doing podcasts and the first I reached out to a handful at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, and then now I'd say about 60% or so of the ones that I do are people that are coming to me and going, "Hey, I saw you on this other podcast. Would you like to be on ours?"
Oh,
So I think with y'all, I reached out to y'all. I can't
you
remember.
did, because you
Yeah,
were on a podcast that we were on. So you were like, hey, we should do a podcast
which one
together.
was it?
Uh,
Because I've
Ghost,
is it
ghost,
Ghost
ghost
Head
head
Nerd
talk,
Talk?
nerd talk. I can
okay,
never
yeah, yeah,
remember
yeah,
their name.
The one with
yeah,
a really long name.
yeah. Ghost Head. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've been on their
Yeah.
podcast twice. That guy's really nice.
Yeah.
And and
Joe and
Rain is
Rain.
Joe and Rain. They're great, super nice people.
Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
I went on there and they normally talk about Ghostbusters, I guess, but
Mm-hmm.
um, every time I've been on there, it's different subjects. So
Yeah, they're really like truly a variety podcast, which I love
mhm.
because I love when
I
you
love
can
it
just
too.
kind of like get on a podcast and talk about whatever. Like
Yeah,
Which is
there's
ours.
no theme that yeah, like ours. There's no theme you have to stick to. It's whatever you're feeling in the moment.
yeah. I have a I have this. I always have this like I've been a creative person since I was a kid, I guess. So I have like all these ideas that I keep getting, and then I kind of get like, oh, I should really do that. That would be a lot of fun. And then I have to dial myself back in and go, wait a minute, no, no, no. And it may be maybe ADHD. My wife swears I'm ADHD,
I
but
think
I don't know.
everybody's ADHD, honestly,
But
in
yeah,
this
like
day
I'll
and
get these
age.
ideas like I should try this, I should try this, and then I'm like, wait a minute, no, 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 I need to focus on this. But one of the things I'd like to do at some point I've thought about is hosting my own podcast or co-hosting with somebody. So I've talked. I was thinking maybe like one that's I don't know. I don't want it to be too out like variety out there, but I was thinking maybe like me and one of my friends that we're both really into music, and I was like maybe we just do a
Mm.
podcast where we're like every episode is like we listen to this whole album of a different band, just random bands that
Yeah.
we like, and just what do we like about this album, and then maybe try to reach out to the artists of that album and be like, hey, would you guys like to come on and talk about your album because we love it,
Yeah,
and
for
just
sure.
see.
Especially if you get into like indie artists and stuff, like smaller artists, for sure. They would love that. And it'd
Yeah, I
be
think
really
that
cool
would
to
be a
listen
lot of
to.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've thought about that, but now I'm kind of like I've been talking about that for a couple weeks with my wife, and she's like, "That's a great idea. Like 3 or 4 years from now." I'm like, I'm like, what? And she's like, "You need to be doing this. We need to focus on these things." I'm like, "You're right. You're right." So she's a really big support system for me. My wife, she reels me in, keeps me focused on the target kind of thing, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, which I feel like as a creative person, you always need somebody who is like that because I feel like most creative people, and I don't know if it's ADHD or if it's just the creativity builds and excites, and we're so excited about that one idea right now that we have to do it right now. And then
Yeah.
you like sit back and you go, I really need to not do that right now. But then you have to like write it down somewhere so that you don't forget about it later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like, I already have 1,000 projects going on right now. I don't need to add
Mm-hmm.
another one at the moment.
Yeah.
yeah. I have a friend that's he does a kids. I've worked with him too. He does a kids show called Mr. K's Clubhouse. It's based out of Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's all over YouTube. It's pretty popular. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she absolutely loves the show. So that says a lot, I guess. And I've gotten to meet him through the Barney community thing online, which I had no idea there was a Barney community until about 3 years ago. And, but there's a really active one, and they're very super nice people. But I got to know this guy who does his own TV show, and I've worked on like some commercial promo stuff with him, and he is like the best as far as like he compartmentalizes everything to and focuses his all of his energy and his what he's working on that one thing. And
Wow.
he, although he has 7 projects in the works that are at different stages, so like maybe he has an episode going, he has a podcast going, he has a he actually has a live show. I'll plug his show because he's my friend. He's got a live show if anybody's in Omaha, Nebraska area. In like a week, he's got a live his very first live kids show. So if you have kids, it's like $10 or something for the tickets, and it's a really good show.
Wow.
It's called Mr. K's Clubhouse. I think it's Treasure. I'll look that up while in a minute. I'll tell you the actual name, but he he's like the best at that. So like he'll take like I'll talk to him about something. I'll be like, hey, did you need me to work on this project that's coming out in 4 months? And he'll say, probably, but I'm not focused on that project right now, but we'll talk later about that for sure. And I'll be like, how are you not thinking about projects that are already announced that are coming out in like 4 months? And he's like, well, I've got it, you know, I've for the next 2.5 weeks, I've focused on this that's coming out first. And then as soon as that's over, then I'll take a day off and I'll do the next thing and I'll focus on that for 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm just
Mm.
like, man, like, and he always is like, I don't get enough sleep. And I'm like, I can tell why, but you know, I struggle with that. And I think a lot of people do is like, you can't like, I'll get 3 or 4 things going in my head. Like I'm going to do these 3 or 4 things and I'm doing all of them at once. And I'm not good at multitasking and it slows
Same.
everything down. So I've told him, I was like, you got to give me some coaching of how the heck you do this because, you know, you're great at it. And he was like, it seems like I'm good at it from the outside. I promise I'm not as good as you think.
But that's kind of good that he's like trained himself basically to block off. Like he's given himself like a block schedule for stuff, which
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
really
like I
cool.
need to start doing because I
We all do,
also do
honestly.
everything at the same time. But like if I'm trying to do something that is for me and then somebody else comes to me and says, "Hey, can you, be on my Twitch stream? Can you be on my podcast? Can you?" I will literally drop whatever I'm doing for myself and do whatever my friend needs, and need to stop doing that so that I can actually get stuff done cuz I have stuff that pops in my brain every once in a while and I'm like, I still haven't done that. I really should do that. And then I just don't do it because I get sidetracked by something else.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Okay,
Yeah, me
so
too. Me too.
his live show is called Mr. K's Toy Chest of Dreams, and it's the 17th of August, so it's coming up in a couple of weeks,
Wow.
And that's in
and it's
That's
Nebraska.
really
cool.
I'm thinking I live in Texas, but I have every intention of driving all the way to Nebraska that weekend with my 3-year-old and taking her to
Ooh,
see it because we're
good luck
friends.
with that.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's like an 8.5, 9 hour drive. But you know what? I was
Oof.
like,
Yeah.
you know what? I like this guy. He's come down to Texas before, and we hung out. Me, him, and his wife, and my daughter. And he was like the nicest person I've ever met. He's the most genuine person. He reminds me of Mister Rogers. Like that's how nice he
Oh.
is. He just and he cares so much about kids, and that's like his whole focus is like, how can I help kids have a good childhood?
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible. Like he came and we hung out and he was like we were actually going around and we were looking at all of the um, Barney places in Dallas and Allen and that area where they shot Barney back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And um, we kind of made a day of that. But he was like, we've got to stop at these 2 parks that are on the way because we want to have your daughter be able to play. And I was like, that's so, he's
Oh.
thinking that way. He's like, well, your daughter's going to be there. So we need to, it needs to be fun for her. And
Yeah.
so it was hilarious because my daughter is always about me because it's daddy's girl thing. But
Uh-huh.
that whole day, she almost forgot I was there. She was like,
Oh.
I want to slide with Mr. K. I want to have him take me up here and do this stuff. And it was funny because she was like, she watches his show. So it was like her meeting her
Oh.
celebrity.
Oh yeah, she's
So
like
to
meeting
Yeah.
her
her, I mean, when
idol.
she saw him, she was
Oh.
like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's Mr. K!" And she was so excited. It was great. he was like the nicest person, and I kept feeling like I had to apologize to him. It's like, I'm so sorry, my daughter's like clinging all over you today. He's like, dude, it's totally fine. He's like, I work around kids all day long, and I absolutely love it. And he has kids too, so
Oh,
he gets it.
how sweet.
But yeah, I like to talk about him sometimes because he's doing something that there's not a lot of out there that's quality. There's a lot of like Coco Melon and stuff like that, which I think is really annoying.
Yeah.
And his show is like educational and fun, and it's like that, you can tell the difference. You can tell that there's a lot of heart in it, and a lot of,
Hmm.
you know, spend a lot of time studying how kids react to certain things. What are things that their struggles that they have. I don't know if you can hear it, but my cat in the background is like howling.
We love that because Casey is normally the one that has the barn in the background, so
Yeah.
we're used to that. But yeah, that sounds so sweet. Like he's truly making a show for the kids. It's not for the money. It's not to be worldwide. It's literally for the children, which I love. I feel like a lot of things nowadays are not for the kids. It's like have
For
them
sure,
hurry up
yeah.
and grow up so they can consume and be a part of this society. And it's like, can we let them be children and learn at a normal child's pace and have it be
Exactly.
fun?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a, I got to, with voicing Barney, it kind of put me, I've always liked cartoons and kids shows and things like that, but
Hmm.
um, having a daughter, I kind of decided, I'm like, I'm going to introduce her and kind of show her. I mean, I let her watch what she wants to watch that's new, but
Yeah.
I've introduced her as an infant to like shows that I grew up watching. So some of her favorite
Hmm.
shows are like Barney. She likes Little Bear. She likes
Oh, I love Little Bear.
she likes Franklin and a lot of these old cartoon shows that when I was a kid.
Hmm.
And it's cool because as an adult I would never go back and just like watch Barney and these shows, just
Hmm.
because I grew up watching them and kind of grew out of them and became an adult. But I still have a little bit of a kid in me, because when I can sit with her and I can sit and watch these and I find myself thoroughly enjoying some of them, like, okay, it brings your childhood a little bit. I think kids are
Hmm.
the best about that. I think if you're around a lot of kids, you stay young. You stay,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you stay focused on what they're thinking and how you start seeing the way that they process things. And it's really interesting.
How does I was gonna ask, how does your daughter react to, because you do, I'm assuming you do the voice of Barney around her. How does she react to that?
That's a good question. So she I started doing all these, like, so she was born in 2020. So right at the same time that I started doing the voice acting stuff, she was born right in the middle of that. And so I kind of took a couple months, obviously, when she was born, to not be doing that. But after that, she's kind of grown up with me having a vocal booth in the house and talking in a mic a lot. And so she loves to like sneak into my vocal booth, and like she'll get up in the chair and she'll like sit there and talk and sing into the microphone when I'm not looking, and it's cute. But yeah, so as a before I got the Barney thing, obviously I could do the voice and a lot of other voices and stuff that she likes. So she loves the Looney Tunes, so she loves that stuff. So she always giggles and thought it was funny as an infant, and I would do that. But since I've gotten the Barney role, she was actually the first person that I told. It's my
Oh.
3-year old, her, and then I told my wife. But at first, she kind of was like, when I told her, she was only like a year and a half, 2 years old. It's like she was like maybe two, and when I told her, "Hey, Daddy's gonna be Barney. He's gonna voice Barney," and she's like, "Daddy's voice Barney?" And I said, "Yeah." And
Oh,
she's like, "Okay." It's like, and I was like, "Okay, that
she's
wasn't
like,
very."
cool, Dad.
She's like,
Yeah.
cool.
And so,
Nice.
but then, what was cool is when that video that I did with Mattel came out. It was on Valentine's Day. Um, and it's kind of in the style of the Steve from Blue's Clues thing, where he kind of talks to the camera and he's like, "Hey, checking in
Mm.
with you," you know, that whole thing. I don't know if it was
Mhm.
viral. I don't know if y'all saw it or not. Where he was basically like, "Hey, you know, when I moved off to college and all that," and he's like talking to people who watched Blue's Clues in the '90s.
Mhm.
But they,
Steve was my Blue's Clues
Yeah.
heck
host.
yeah, yeah, that's my favorite too.
Same.
But that's another show my daughter watches, and we actually make a whole thing out of that. I got her and me both notebooks from the show, and we sit there
Cute.
and we draw the clues, and I kind of use it as a way to teach her how to draw, and
Yeah.
that's what we do together sometimes. So, but anyway, when she found out that or when that video with the Barney thing came out, my mom was watching her at her house, and she pulled up the video and she was watching it, and my daughter heard it, and she said, "Is that Barney?" And my mom was like, "Yeah, that's Barney." And she said, "Is it Daddy?" You know, and
Oh.
then it was like she said, "Yeah, it's your daddy." And she goes, "Oh, I want to watch Daddy." And so she listened to all of it, and then she whenever I got took over there to pick her up, she was like, "Daddy, I saw you as Barney. It was so cool." And I was like,
Oh.
"Okay, so now it's cool." And yeah, so we anyway, it's kind of funny because she'd hear me doing all this stuff all the time, and she would it kind of I kind of sometimes would be like, okay, she doesn't really understand it. But then she brought, like, I had a whole, but I went to a Barney reunion dinner. That was kind of just to preface this part of the story. I was invited to a Barney reunion dinner with a bunch of cast members and people who were in the marketing side mainly. So like they did the
Oh.
books and stuff back in the '90s. They either drew the books or they did the artwork for them or whatever. And they were super nice people, but they asked me to come be a guest of honor, which I thought was hilarious. But because I was just barely doing anything at that point, and but they were so nice, and they all, as like a gift to me, I guess, they all brought like 3 or 4 books that they worked on and gave them to me.
Oh.
And these were like books
Wow.
from the early '90s that were in mint condition, some of them
Wow.
sealed. And I was like,
Wow.
wow, this is cool. So, and of course, I started looking into it. I was like, I just for curiosity, say, how much are some of these things worth? And I was like, okay, some of these are worth like 50, $60, but those are, these are in the package. So it's like,
Yeah.
but I would never sell them because it's like such a memento of like, this was people that I got to know because of the first big thing I did, and
Mhm.
they're giving me this stuff. But my daughter, some of the ones that are open, she saw some of these. I was showing them to her, because they knew I had a kid, so they were like, we want to send him home with stuff that she can see. And
Yeah.
so my daughter brought me one of the books, and she says, "Hey, Daddy, can you read this book to me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll read to you," which I do a lot. And I said, "Okay." So I sat down on the couch. Well, then she brings me the one of her Barney dolls, and she says, "Daddy, I want Barney to read it to me."
Oh.
And I was like, "Okay, okay." So every now and then with stuff like that, I realize now that she's connected the dots that, hey, he does this. This is what he likes to do. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, so we're reading the Barney book, and doing that, and I'm reading it as Barney, and then she will like she's looking at the Barney doll. She never acknowledges that I'm there the rest of the time. And she's talking directly to Barney in between pages when we're turning. She's like, "Barney, do you like this book?" And I'm like, "Oh, I sure do. This is one of my favorite books." It's
She's
fun
like,
to
you don't
do.
exist right now, Dad.
Yeah.
Oh, she was
Just
loving it.
Barney.
Yeah, she's loving it. So yeah, she knows what I do, and she enjoys it. She likes to tell people when we're out in public that Daddy is Barney, and they kind of look at her funny.
Oh.
They kind of look at her funny because they're like, what is she talking about? And they're like, "Daddy's Barney," and she think because she carries around a Barney doll sometimes, and so anytime she has
Oh.
that, she'll be like, "Daddy is Barney," and she'll point at Barney, and they kind of look at her like, "Okay, yeah,
Like,
sure," and
okay.
then I kind of have to be like, "Okay, yeah, she's telling you that because I have voiced Barney, I do voice acting," and then I have to kind of tell them, and then of course it's like, "Can you do the voice for us?" So I do it a lot, but it's one of many many voices that I do. I do a lot of other ones. I do like Scooby and Shaggy. Like Scooby Doo, where
Oh
are
my
you,
god.
man? And, ooh, over here, Scooby Dooby Doo. And that I do a lot of voices. and those are it's just one of many, but it's the one that I've gotten actually to officially do. So that's the one that
That's
everybody likes
awesome.
right now. It's fun to do. I enjoy it.
That's super cool. I also think it's cool that like your daughter is like growing up on the same thing because like like Barney, Blue's Clues, and Scooby Doo were like my three shows that I absolutely
Mhm.
loved growing up. So that's cool that you're like still because like you were saying earlier, like I don't have kids. Jamie doesn't have kids. We don't have kids.
No.
I don't understand the kids shows nowadays, to be honest. I'm like, what?
Except
Honestly, I
Bluey.
don't
We
either.
Yeah, except
understand
for Bluey.
Yeah.
Bluey.
I love Bluey, but
Bluey's
other than
great. Yeah, my
that,
daughter
Bluey's
likes Bluey.
amazing.
that one gets a pass in my opinion. But there's like
Yeah,
so
but
many,
everything else is just like, ugh.
yeah, and like it's cool that like you're still keeping that going because like I Barney and Blue's Clues were great kid shows. I personally love them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and what's good about it is, if this was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or something, if I was showing my daughter these shows, that they would be really obscure to people, probably because there wasn't, we didn't have streaming services as much then. And so if
Mhm.
I was showing her Blues Clues, probably most of the kids she'd be going to school with in a couple weeks, they're not going to know what the heck she's talking about when she's talking about it. But now with all the streaming services, I mean, like, there's almost every kid show that you ever came out, or
Mhm.
at least a majority of the big ones are on streaming services. So she can go to school and say, "Hey, I like Blues Clues," which there's a new Blues Clues out on TV. So that it's kind of, even the new kid, young kids are watching the new one, but she can go to school and say, "Hey, I like watching, Blues Clues
Blue's
and Little
Clues
Bear."
and
And they'll say, "Oh, where can I watch that?" And she can be like, "Oh, they're all on Paramount Plus. I can, and then they'll go home and watch
mhm.
them." So it's kind of more of like it's more open right now than it's ever been as far as, and because used to it'd be like you don't, I don't know, I didn't really ever have this thing, but a lot of my friends did, where my parents would show me something, I would think it's awesome because I love anything. Like, I'm a huge TV show person. I love movies. I love old, really really old movies. But a lot of my friends would be like, "Yeah, that's really old. I only like new stuff." And
Which is
so,
such a
but now,
weird
yeah,
frame of mind. I never understood
exactly.
that.
Yeah, me neither. But there's people, like, I'll be like, "Hey, you should listen to this song. It came out in the '50s, but it's great." And they're like, no, I don't want to listen to that. And they don't even give it a chance. But I
Ugh.
think the newer generation, like the youngest kids, they're growing
Mhm.
up in a different environment than we had when we were, like when I was a
Oh,
kid, it was like,
100%.
I better stick a VHS tape in the player when it's on TV, or I'm not going to get to watch it. you know
Mhm.
so now it's just like, okay, now, oh, there's this show that came out in the 60s that was good back then, and you can find it on the streaming service and show it to somebody, and they may not even realize that it's super old. So when it's there and it's being promoted on Netflix or YouTube or whatever, it's there and they're like, "Oh, okay, this is cool. This is new stuff." So that's why you see, it's funny cuz like I'll see, like, on Netflix, it's like, this show is number 1 this week or whatever on Netflix, and I'm like, "That's Seinfeld. That came out in the 90s."
Yeah.
you know. And so I'm a binge watcher. I like to watch old shows, and so I've been binge watching Seinfeld. I've been binge watching, a ton of different old television shows that I watched a little bit of when I was a kid, but didn't really watch enough of to appreciate it. And that's
Or
that's fun. I like the
yeah,
streaming thing.
I do too because for me in particular, because we never, I live kind of like out in the boonies, not as far as Casey does, but almost there. But we never like, I was actually talking to my friend the other day. I didn't have Wi-Fi until maybe like 8-ish years ago at my house. Had dial up for the longest time, super fun. We didn't have a DVR until I was in like high school. So everything from like my younger years, it's nice that a lot of it is on streaming because I can go back and watch one everything in order, not just random
Right.
episodes that you catch here and there, but also to like everything my parents used to watch on TV is now on a streaming service for the most part, so we get to rewatch things that they used to watch. So it's a really cool like passing of knowledge of older TV shows, movies, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And so I feel
Yeah. And
like kids nowadays have a wider range of what they like.
Yeah, for sure. And I like the, I don't know, maybe it's, I was really close with my parents, so
Mhm.
and I still am. Me and my dad particularly have a lot in common when it comes to movies and TV shows and music, because he took an interest kind of, and that's a lot of the reason why I'm doing that with my daughter, is because he really took an interest in trying to show me things that he liked.
Mhm.
And he didn't push it on me, but he would just be like, "Hey, have you ever heard this? I really like this. I think you ought to give it a chance and listen to some of it, or watch this movie, or hey, would you like to watch this movie with me?" So I remember as a kid, growing up, like he'd go and rent movies of stuff that he liked when he was a kid, and he'd be like, "Hey, let's watch Ghostbusters together." And I'm like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Just trust me, I think you'll like it." And then
Mhm.
it was like, well, now we're having to go buy the movie because I'm watching it every day. So,
Yeah.
as a little kid. So, yeah, it's just stuff like that where you, now there's all these streaming services. So it is cool. So, like, me and my wife, we like go over to my dad's house every couple of weeks. We plan a day, and we'll go over to my dad's house, and we have like a show or two that we watch, and we'll watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time together with my dad, of a show that he grew up watching when he was, well, not grew up watching, but so the one we're watching right now is Lois and Clark, which was the Superman show from the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Great
It's a good
show, by the way.
show.
And so we've started watching that, and we're in like season 3, and we'll go over there every couple weeks and spend 4 or 5 hours, and we'll watch maybe 3 episodes and have dinner. And it's fun, it's just cool because he watched that when he was in, his late 20s, my age now, like I'm
Mhm.
30 something, 31 now. So it was around that same time, and so he grew up watching that, and now I've seen some of them, but I haven't seen all of them, and so we're watching them, and I'm like, a lot of them I've never seen before. But
Yeah.
it's fun, and it gives you something that you can do together with that you'll remember. And then I actually have my daughter will go with us, and she'll watch it, and so when she hears the theme song, she's like, "Daddy, it's a Superman show." She knows,
Aw.
so she'll sit there and watch it with us. And so it's like, there's 3 generations of people sitting there watching the same thing, kind of sharing that moment. And I think that's important. I think you have to, there's nothing, I mean, I know obviously you said y'all don't have kids, but I will say, if you ever do, your whole perspective of life changes like instantly. And I'd heard that from people before I had a kid, and I didn't
Mhm.
understand it at all, but it really does. You have that, even when my wife was pregnant, it was like I didn't really get it at that point. I was like, I'm gonna have a kid, that's great. But the moment that you hold that child for the first time, you're like, I think that's the first time, even though I love my wife and I thought I knew what unconditional love was, I think I really actually knew what it was whenever I held my daughter for the first time, and I'm like, okay, there is nothing this girl could ever do that would make me not love her as much as I do
Mhm.
right now. So that's like real, honest, true love. So kids will change your whole perspective of an outlook of life, and
Mhm.
it's all a positive thing, I think, because you recapture your inner child that you lost when you became a teenager and started like rebelling against everything. You get that you see yourself as a kid again in their through their eyes of how they're like, "Daddy, what is this, what is that?" It's all, "Tell me what this is." Everything's curious, she's curious about everything, and it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, their wonder is endless.
Yeah, if you ever have a child one day, just know it's the greatest thing that'll ever happen to you, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have a nephew, and just having, and he's not even related by blood. He's my best friend's son, but
Mhm.
literally the second she told me that she was pregnant, I was like, I love him, and he's gonna be mine. That's my child. You don't have no child. That's my child now. But it's so much fun because she lives in Oklahoma, so when I go to visit her, because I've gone to visit her maybe every couple of years since she moved, and like when I used to go, our trips used to be about us and us going shopping and us doing this and us doing that. And so now when I go out there, it's definitely we're both focused on him. We do get our time without him, but it's very he's in his dinosaur phase right now. And
My daughter
so
is too.
yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, he can rattle off like all of like full scientific names of all of these dinosaurs, and I love because she has introduced him to the Land Before Time.
Oh,
And
I've introduced my daughter to that. She loves him.
yes, and
Absolutely.
so for both of us, that has been very nostalgic watching through all of those with him, but just to see his amazement with the movies, no matter how many times he's already watched them, is just truly spectacular.
Right. You hear all those songs from those movies, the big, big,
Mhm.
big, big water. I remember that song. And yeah, those and what's funny is when I'll watch these movies and I don't remember, like I'll put them in, I'll be like, I remember liking this when I was a kid, but I don't
Mhm.
remember much about it.
Yes.
And I'll put it in, and then it's like suddenly it unlocks this like not dark memory, but memory that's locked in the back of my brain that I haven't accessed
Yeah.
since I was like 4. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember all the words to the song, and I remember how it goes all of a sudden out of nowhere. And if I'd had 10 minutes ago, I wouldn't have had any memory of it at all,
Yeah.
I thought. And yeah, it's just crazy. Like I showed her the Iron Giant, which I liked when I was a
Oh,
Oh,
kid,
such a good movie.
and she loved it. She was like, this is so good. I like this. It's funny. All the stuff that's to me has been the most fun, and I really like the age she is at right now. Like your toddler age, but you're also kind of she's very into trying to be independent, trying to be a big girl, like she says.
Mm.
And so everything is like, no, I want to do this by myself. Let me do this.
And
She'll
you're
get
like,
real frustrated
okay.
if you're trying to help her with something. But yeah, it's the funnest thing to me. The most fun I can have right now is spending time with her and my wife together, and us showing her things that we like, that and then her seeing her take an interest in it. And sometimes she's like, Daddy, I don't like this. you
Oh,
know
and you're
but
like, okay, not this
yeah,
one.
yeah, and then I'm just like, that's okay, you don't have to like it, we can watch something else, and I'll throw on something else. But yeah, it's fun. I introduced her to Monsters Inc. and um,
Oh,
her
yeah.
big thing right now, I hesitated to even show her Frozen for the longest time
oh,
Oh,
because I knew that's all I would
yeah.
hear for the next year. And
Yeah.
we finally were like, well, let's let her watch Frozen. And my wife was like, no, please don't do this. And I was like, she's going to go to school in like a month, and all these kids are going to know what Frozen is, and she's not going to
Mhm.
understand any of it. We've got to show it to her. And she was like, okay, now, of course, she's obsessed with it. She runs around the house singing Let It Go all day long, every second. And it's fun. It's great. I love it.
it's the Frozen effect, as they say.
Yeah, truly.
Frozen was a huge movie, I guess.
It was. And it's a spectacular movie, but like kids, I guess similar to adults, take things to the extreme, and then when you hear it over and over and over and over and over, you're like, please, please make it stop.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when you tell them, sorry, we lost the DVD and
Oopsie.
Disney Plus deleted it. I'm so sorry, we can't
Oh
watch
yeah.
it.
It's hard to do that now because my daughter knows how to use she's 3 and she
Oh
knows
my
how to use
gosh,
her
they
own
learn
she knows how to
so
use my
fast.
tablet. She knows how to use the
Mm.
TV remotes and the controllers. And I'm like, how the heck did you pick this up that's fast?
Oh
And it's
yeah.
funny because my dad calls me about everything that's technical or any technology stuff. He's like, hey, I have a question. How do I get my a sound from my TV into my audio receiver for this that I'm
Hmm.
watching and all that. And I'm like, and I've told him the same. He calls me every week and he's like, how do I do this? And I'm like, you literally called me last week and I've told you this. And he's like, yeah, but I don't remember. And then I bring him up, my daughter over there, and I'm like, hey, she's gonna show you how to use the tablet, and she'll go through all of it. Daddy, Papa, this is how you do. You go here and you do this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And my dad's just like, this is really sad that I'm this much older than her, and I don't understand how to do some of this, and she just picks it up, and it's crazy because you start realizing that's another thing when you have a kid, you start realizing wow, kids pick up things so fast.
And they pick up everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the things
Everything.
you don't want them to.
Yeah.
You say
Yes,
a
you're like,
bad you
that
say a
wasn't
bad
meant for
word.
you.
You
Yeah.
say a bad word, the next thing you know she's saying it at church or at a
Everywhere.
family
To
member's
everybody.
house, at my grandma's, and she's saying a bad word and she's like, "Where did you hear that? That's not a
Yeah.
nice word. Mommy and daddy said it." And then my grandma's like,
As
"Well,
you
they
ratting
shouldn't
you
be
out.
saying that." It's great. They'll get you in trouble.
Oh, yes. And they will not have a single worry about it. They're just la la on their way.
Yeah.
Now, since you've been watching through a lot of nostalgic things with your daughter, as a voice actor, do you find that you focus more on people's voices? And is that a good thing or a bad thing if you do?
I always have, yeah. I don't know why. I feel like that every time I talk to another voice actor, it's like all of the voice actors had that same thing. They, for some reason, anyone else can watch a cartoon or something and go, "Oh, this is a great show. I really like this." And that's about, maybe they like the characters, they like that, but their primary focus was not, the voice for that one character was just really distinctive and I liked it. They might
Mm-hmm.
notice it if you brought it up, but it's not what they're not hearing it immediately. Um, and I feel like every voice actor that I've talked to, they all have that in their brain. It's just wired that way that they hear it and they're like, "Oh, that's a Brooklyn accent. Oh, that's this. Oh, or oh, I like the pitch of that voice." And so I've always been good at, like, I'll go to a movie that's animated and I have no clue who's in it, and I listen
Mm-hmm.
to, like, especially nowadays when they're just using a normal voice. but
Yes. And you're like, I
Mhm.
know they've been in something. What was it?
but I immediately am like, "Oh, that's whoever," and I'll name it off, and my wife's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's who that is." And it always is. But
That's
I
funny.
can even do it sometimes with, like, where they're playing a character voice. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
voice that I know well, I can be like, "I recognize that it's this person doing that voice." And they're like there's been multiple people that have played Bugs Bunny, for instance, but you could play a random clip from any Bugs Bunny cartoon that's ever made, and I maybe never have seen that episode, but if I hear it, and I can tell you which voice actor it is, just because I can hear the differences even though they're really close.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I can do that, but I can also play, I play piano and guitar, and I can play by ear. So I think that's connected, because a lot of
Oh.
people
Mm.
who
Mhm.
can play by music by ear can also recognize some of those things. So I guess that's connected somehow, maybe but yeah, I can hear a song and I can go, maybe I couldn't tell you, I couldn't go be like, "That's a G, that's a C," I couldn't do that, but I can listen to a song with my guitar and I can figure out one chord maybe out of two or three
Mm-hmm.
real quick. And then I know, because I also know some music theory, I can hear it and go, "Okay, well, that's going to go, if it's a C, then the most common, chords are going to be G or F or A minor or A." And so then I can figure out a song by listening to it, usually before the song's over,
Mm-hmm.
and so that, I think that's part of, because it's kind of just how your brain functions for people that really like sounds and voices and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of people that are in the voice acting community that are on the autism spectrum, and
Oh.
though and that I think has something to do with their people who are autistic can really focus on specific things. One of my favorite voice actors is Billy West, who
Mm-hmm.
does all of the Futurama voices. He was Ren and Stimpy back in the day. He was Doug
Oh.
from the Doug show. He was Doug and Roger, the bad guy. And
Oh.
yeah, and he's done a lot of voice acting. He was also Bugs Bunny in the first Space Jam movie.
Ooh.
And but he's on the autism spectrum, and he's talked about that too. And he's like, for some reason, my mind, it seems like, is wired in a way that I hear voices and I'm like, I want to learn how to do that voice. And oh my gosh, I like how this sounds. I like this, and he can also play music by ear. So I've never been, nobody's ever told me that I was autistic. I've never been tested for it. I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know. Maybe I am, but I don't know. My wife has said that there maybe I have some tendencies that might be, but so people who never let I guess my point in saying that is never let something like being on the autism spectrum or a disability, which I don't even consider autism a disability in my opinion. I think it's
Mm-mm.
you can do so much stuff and be on the autism spectrum, and a lot of the things you can do better than other people. So
Oh, 100%.
Oh yeah,
so
for
it's like I
sure.
have so many friends that are on the autism spectrum, and I love them to death because they are some of the most talented and some of the most creative people that I've ever met in my life. And it's great. I mean, I absolutely love them. But so never let there's people probably that are like, oh, I have this disability or I have this thing and I feel like I can't, it's going to hold me back from doing something. Never think that way.
No.
You should, two things. That's not something something only holds you back if you let it. And second off, um, more so than any disability, what holds people back more than anything is not a disability. It's just the fear or um, the lack of confidence of I can do something good.
Yeah. Most of the
Because
time, it's you standing in your own way. That's all.
exactly,
Hmm.
yeah. And I did that for a long time. I was doing that, and I was like, I'm not as good as maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, or what people say. And I'm not saying that I'm some amazing, but I started
But you're going
putting
for it.
this, yeah, and it was like at a point in my life where I was like, I'm about to be 30, and in 4 or 5 years, and I'm like, if I don't do something with this right now, I know I'm gonna look back and go, I wish I had. Worst case scenario, and I still feel this way. Whenever I reach out to somebody to be like, hey, I want to do this, I'd like to do this project with you. Hey, would you be interested in hiring me for this or that? Worst case scenario, they either never respond or they say no. But who cares? If they
Yeah.
say yes, I mean, if you never asked, then they can't say
Then you'll
yes.
never know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of you have to develop this thing of instead of fear of rejection, you have to look forward to it in a
Mm-hmm.
way. You
Hmm.
have to be like, you know what, I'm gonna go ask this, even though I know they're gonna say no. I'm gonna go expecting them to say no, but that means because I know they're gonna say no, I'm just gonna give it my all and do the best I can. And if they say yes, then I'm surprised. But if they say no, I'm not let down and I'm pushed in myself. I'm going, you know what? They said no because the next person might say yes. And I just kind of use that as a way to drive myself. Like I look forward to, not really forward to rejection, but I look forward to, if this is a rejection, I get to do something next that's even better.
Yeah. You
You
look
know?
forward to having a concrete answer, a yes or a no. And
Yeah.
also, too, I feel like when you apply yourself and you throw yourself out there, they may say no for this project, but maybe in a next project, they'll be like, you know what? What about that one guy that was like totally not qualified? Maybe we could get him. He seemed really enthusiastic about something that he had very little chance. So maybe we can get him on board. And people remember you that way,
That's
especially if you
100%
keep
true.
going at it. Because they'll be like, you know what? This person shows up for like every audition. So obviously they're ready to commit. Whereas like all these other people maybe show up. So,
Yeah, that's 100% true. They, especially with people who are casting directors.
mm-hmm.
So if they're hearing all these auditions all day long, and you'd be surprised how many situations will come up where it's like I've auditioned for 7 roles in a week and I didn't hear back on any of those. But then out of the blue, 6 months later, you get an audition request instead of like getting it pitched to you or
Mm-hmm.
you seeking it out. You get an audition request from somebody that you submitted to before, and they're like, "Hey, I was going through some of these auditions a couple months ago, and I liked yours, but I didn't like it for that role. But I'm doing this other project now, and I really liked how you auditioned with that voice for this character. I think it would fit with this one because that's what they're doing. I mean, that's the job of being a casting director is literally to go,
Mm-hmm.
who would be good at this? So yes, they listen to auditions 100%, they do. But sometimes they go, there's not any of these auditions that are perfect, but there was this person that sent me this 6 months ago, and for some reason it stuck in my head that, wow, that's a
Mm-hmm.
cool voice, we should use that in something. And they reach out to you and go, hey, would you be interested in auditioning for this new project? And you're like, yeah, sure, and so that's yeah, 100% right when you said that. That so never be afraid of getting a rejection from an audition because it could lead to something else, or get you in the ears of a casting director.
Yeah. And you never know. Sometimes when you get rejected from stuff, that means that something else bigger and better, or something that works with your schedule
Mm-hmm.
or works with a good timeline comes along, and it'll be way better than if whatever you originally applied for. So you never know what the future will hold.
Yeah, I try to be
Absolutely.
optimistic. I mean, I feel like that there obviously there's difficult times. I've had some, and a lot of people have them, or have it way worse than I do. Um, but the thing is I feel like you have to look at big picture and like your whole life and go, you know what? I've had some rough times, but overall my life is pretty good. And you have to kind of not let yourself get into a rut where you're like, yeah, I've been auditioning for, something every day this week and I haven't heard back anything. Because then, 2 months from now, you might go, well, now I've got 7 projects that I auditioned for 3 months ago, and they're all wanting me to do this. And then you're busy, and that's great, and then you're like, man, I wish I didn't have so many projects to work on. I can't do anything else, but it's a great thing, to just, and that's another thing with probably part of the reason why I haven't really walked away from doing another job at the same time is because it's not really all that consistent. So I would recommend if somebody's trying to get into voice acting, don't get into it to make money because that's not what it's about. If you make a lot of money doing it, that's wonderful, but it's the exception. It's not really the rule. So do it because that's if you actually love doing it, do it because of that. Don't do it expecting to be successful. Don't do it expecting for people to be like, oh my gosh, you're the greatest. I love you. If that happens, that's great, but do it because that's what you want to do. And that's kind of what I haven't really gone after, like, you know, I want to make a bunch of money. I want to do this. I want to do that. If it happens, wonderful. That would be great. If I can just do this, but I'm totally fine with having another job and doing this as for a fun thing on the side. So as long as you have that perspective, you're not disappointing yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't set your expectations too high. I mean, you obviously want to create a goal to go after, but sometimes if you set the bar too high, you were never going to hit it anyways. So it's always good to kind of keep yourself in check, keep yourself in line.
Yeah, shoot for the above the target,
Mm-hmm.
hoping to hit the target that's just below it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think.
Alrighty, Casey, do you have any more questions for Korey? I don't think I have any.
I don't think so. I appreciate you coming and talking to us. I think that you are an amazing, clearly, impressionist and voice actor. So super
Thank
cool
you.
to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing your future projects.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously,
Oh
we'll have
yeah,
to keep tabs on that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
If I try to keep, I keep in contact with people and like that I've been on their pod. I've been on a lot of podcasts over the last couple of years because I just enjoy doing it. I'm a talker. I like talking, obviously, and
you're a
that's
yapper, just like
I'm a
Yeah.
us.
yapper. Yeah, so I like to talk, and that's kind of why I'm like I need to do a podcast one day where I'm just hosting because that'll get it out of my system, I guess. But
It doesn't.
it
Sometimes it makes
doesn't
it worse. No.
makes it worse.
It
No,
is
but
nice though because you will have a scheduled yap session at least once a week,
Yeah.
so that's nice.
right, right, for sure. But yeah, I try to keep in touch. I've been on several of them more than once, and especially when I get to like where I'm like, hey, I've got this project that I want to talk about, and then it's like I'll start reaching out to people. So yeah, it was nice to be on here, and I maybe someday I'll come back.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. Um, for everybody listening, don't forget to subscribe and follow us wherever you're listening. We'll also make sure to link Corey's stuff somewhere in the description on our link tree somewhere. You'll be able to find it somewhere.
Yeah, if you go to my website, it's the letter K, D as in dog, so kdvoices.com. All my links are on there.
Excellent. So we'll have that linked somewhere as well. And we will see you guys in the next episode. So bye.
Bye.
Bye.